For this hearing, we are focusing on corruption in Europe and Eurasia. This issue has not been really the recipient of much attention. It certainly hasn't received the attention it deserves. Both globally and in particular countries this committee oversees, it seems that this issue just hasn't really been touched on. It's like maybe some sort of a hot stove. But the corruption, we have to recognize, has been a major factor since the end of the Cold War in the former Soviet states. These countries have worked with various degrees of success to privatize their own state-owned industries and build various institutions that allow for democracy and prosperity. In short, for them, corruption has been a common stumbling block to progress, as it is also, as we recognize, in third world countries. Whether or not it is petty corruption, perhaps by a police officer who's looking to give you a ticket, or at a grander level of corruption, where private interests actually capture control of large chunks of state assets. It hampers reforms. Corruption holds back economic growth, and in far too many cases, it also impoverishes low-income populations in countries that could be doing much better for their entire population. When government institutions serve private interests, enriching oligarchs and enriching politicians instead of addressing the needs of its people, that undermines the faith in government and the rule of law. It undermines the basic stability and any chance for prosperity, or at least any chance for ordinary people to live in prosperity in these countries. Hence, if we understand the general aim of U.S. policy as promoting prosperous, peaceful, and pluralistic countries, fighting corruption should be at the center of that effort. Unfortunately, it is not, and perhaps because there are powerful Western accomplices to these crimes of corruption in developing countries. While we should call out and hold accountable corrupt officials, it is important to understand that in some places corruption is the rule, not the exception. I'd like to cite a recent survey released by Transparency International that found that 1 in 3 people living in Europe and Central Asia believe corruption to be one of the largest problems of their country. Policymakers in the United States and Europe need to think about broad and systematic approaches to this challenge. For example, Western banks, are they complicit in money laundering for corrupt officials? Does that make them an accomplice to the theft of resources that should serve the poorest and most vulnerable people of the world, but instead those resources are being utilized and the profit from it are going to large financial institutions in cooperation with local gangsters and thugs in those countries? What about us? Could we do more to ensure that corrupt officials can't store their ill-begotten gains in Western banks or use it to buy property or businesses in our country? This is too much for today. It's too much for just today. But it will be the subject for an investigative hearing or investigative hearings in the years ahead, whether I'm here or not. I'm looking forward to a discussion today of these things with our witnesses, and I look forward to their testimonies. And without objection, their written statements will be made part of the record. And I now turn to my ranking member, Mr. Gregory Meeks.